Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore, well, a variety of books. Let's just get started.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, so today we're diving deep, deep into Chris Whitaker's All the Colors of the Dark.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is right. And, you gave us excerpts, and they span from the break in 1995 all the way through to the later parts of the story.
Right.
And our mission today, it's pretty straightforward, I guess, but it's crucial to chronologically trace the pivotal events of this book, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah. So we're really going to try to understand what makes its narrative so gripping. And we'll be closely following Saint and Patch, right? Their intertwined paths. And really looking at those defining moments and the really unique connection that they share.
Sure.
So by the end of this, you, the learner, you'll have a clear picture of how the story unfolds and the forces that shape these really memorable characters.
Definitely.
So let's unpack the beginning. 1995, right? Montclair.
Yeah. Montclair, 1995.
Yeah.
What's so fascinating is how we're immediately drawn to this young saint.
Yeah.
And even in these early scenes, her independence, it just shines through.
Oh, yeah.
Particularly in her passion for beekeeping. And when her hives are stolen, she's quick to suspect. She even suspects a local deacon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right off the bat.
Okay, that's interesting. And, just as she's dealing with that personal frustration, over the bees, the community is hit by this much larger crisis, right?
That's right.
The disappearance of Patch, her friend.
Right. Yeah.
And Chief Nix is leading the investigation. And the town essentially goes into lockdown.
A huge deal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the excerpts, they really allow you to feel Saint's emotional distress. You really get a strong sense of her bond with Patch through her reflections on their childhood. Like those little details, like when she was sick, he stayed up with her, or he built her a bug motel.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, it's very sweet. Those moments, they illustrate how close their friendship really was.
Absolutely. And we also get to see Misty Meyer, right?
Right.
At the police station.
Right.
The girl who Patch is implied to have, saved previously.
Right. Right.
And even though her conversation with Saint is pretty brief in the excerpts, we really see the lasting impact of her own, traumatic encounter. And it's haunting because she can't recall the face of her attacker.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's scary.
So even in this early introduction of this kind of, darkness, it really sets the tone for what will come in this seemingly peaceful town.
Right, right. And, Saint, driven by that strong connection with Patch, she doesn't hesitate, right? She's immediately determined to find him.
Yeah.
And she's out searching the woods, and she even starts questioning Dr. Toombs' presence near where Misty was attacked. It's that youthful resolve that really stands out.
It does. It really does. And I think it's important to consider, Norma. Norma's growing concern for Saint.
Right, right.
Because you've got the school closures, this pervasive uncertainty,
Right.
And her anxieties, understandably, they just escalate.
Right, of course.
So we even get a sense of her past grief over the loss of Saint's mother, which kind of mirrors the current crisis, right?
Yeah.
And highlights the depth of her protective feelings for Saint.
Yeah, for sure. And to really understand, the roots of their relationship, the excerpts, they give us this nice little flashback to Saint selling her honey, right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Her early venture. And it's there that they first meet.
Right.
And Patch, in this kind of sweet and slightly awkward gesture, asks about the honey, right? But he had crossed out another girl's name on her card, on Saint's card, and written his own.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
He was really going for it.
I know, right? I know. That's pretty bold. But it's a telling moment, about his early interest in her.
For sure. And that protective instinct we talked about.
Right.
It goes both ways. Even in those chaotic first few hours, Saint, she overhears people talking about Patch as a suspect.
Right.
And her immediate reaction is to defend him.
Yeah.
She has this unwavering faith in his innocence.
Yeah, yeah. And then here's where things take a really sharp turn.
Yeah.
Because in their own search, Saint and Patch stumble upon Dr. Toombs with blood on his hands.
Oh, no.
I know.
What?
Near the woods. And
dude.
Saint's reaction is just pure horror, and she runs away. This is a big moment, right?
Yep.
It solidifies the tragedy surrounding Joseph Macaulay's disappearance.
Right, right.
And then, of course, following that traumatic discovery. Saint struggles, understandably, with the emotional fallout.
Yeah, of course.
The excerpts really depict her grief, her loss of appetite, her sleeplessness, and even just like the empty seat at school.
Yeah.
It serves as a constant reminder of her loss.
It's a very visual representation of that absence.
Yeah, yeah. And yet, even in her pain, Saint's moral compass, it guides her.
Right.
She desires justice for Patch, but she also has empathy for Misty.
Right.
She even expresses a wish to participate in a demonstration.
Interesting.
It highlights her sense of right and wrong.
Yeah. Very strong morals.
Yeah, very much so. And despite the danger, her search for Patch, it continues, right?
Yeah.
She puts herself in these increasingly risky situations, and of course, this just worries Norma even more.
Right.
It emphasizes Saint's loyalty, her refusal to give up.
Yeah.
And then we get this brief but really revealing memory from Saint where Patch confides in her about the police chief waiting outside their house when his mom worked nights.
Oh, okay.
And it reveals a kind of like a vulnerability in Patch,
Yeah.
a reliance on this perceived safety. And it adds like another layer to his character.
For sure.
And the excerpts also show us the community's grief, especially during that vigil for Joseph Macaulay.
Yeah.
It's a very powerful moment that highlights that shared loss, you know?
Right. Everyone's feeling it.
Yeah, the whole town. And so Saint, in her way of coping, she turns to photography.
Okay.
She uses her old Nikon to capture the world, right?
Yeah.
And she reads about trauma and forensic science.
Wow.
Almost as a way to keep Patch's memory alive.
Right.
And understand what's happening.
Resistance.
Yeah. She even takes fingerprint lifting information to Chief Nix.
No way.
Yeah. Showing like how proactive she is.
Yeah, she's trying to find answers.
Yeah, she's very determined. In those quiet moments where she's reflecting on happier times with Patch, contrasted with the present tragedy, it really shows how deep their friendship was.
Yeah, you really feel that loss.
Yeah. And then we get a flashback to 1974.
Okay.
Showing Norma's initial like reservations about Patch.
Interesting.
Yeah, she misjudged him, but then she softens up after witnessing his kindness towards Saint.
That's nice.
Yeah, it is. It adds context to their evolving relationship.
Yeah.
And then Saint's investigation, it takes this crucial turn when she connects a poster to someone she remembers seeing at a store.
Okay.
And this leads to a very tense phone call with Chief Nix.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, he urges her to stop.
I bet she doesn't.
No, she doesn't.
I knew it.
She's very determined. And so remembering Patch's description of Eli Aaron, she goes to his property.
That's brave.
Yeah, very. And it leads to this terrifying discovery, Aaron's dark room in a red barn.
Oh, that's creepy.
It is, right? And inside that dark room, this frightening encounter unfolds. Eli Aaron, he recites a passage that Saint knows as a funeral prayer her grandmother said.
Oh, that's so disturbing.
I know, right? Like, there's immediately that connection between Aaron and death.
Oh, yeah.
And then, boom, the lights go out.
Oh, no.
I know. And he takes a picture of Saint without her glasses.
Oh, gosh.
It's unsettling.
Very.
Very much so. But then her escape from that dark room leads to an even more disturbing discovery. She finds screens showing rooms, including a bunker, with a shape on a mattress.
Oh, no.
I know. It intensifies the mystery.
Right.
It suggests the possibility of other victims.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, it's really chilling. And then we jump forward 3 years, 1998.
Okay.
And we find Patch imprisoned, injured,
Yeah.
disoriented.
It's so sad.
Yeah, the atmosphere is immediately bleak. And he interacts with another captive, a girl named Misty, although it's implied that this might actually be Callie Montrose,
Oh, okay.
who's also being held by Eli Aaron.
Wow.
And in these interactions, it's striking how they form this like cautious connection. They share these little details about their confinement, small attempts to hold on to hope.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah. And then Patch's reflections during captivity, they're really revealing. You know, he thinks back to his past with Saint and Norma,
Right.
the kindness they showed him, his own attempts to fit in. He also remembers that feeling of security he had when the police chief's car was outside his house, highlighting that past vulnerability. And then there's this very poignant moment where Patch, he reveals to Misty that it's his birthday.
Oh.
I know. The stark contrast to their grim reality, you know. It
Yeah.
underscores the personal cost of their captivity.
Yeah.
And their conversations, they also hint at this psychological manipulation that they're enduring.
Oh, of course.
Patch even begins to question his own memories.
Wow.
Which is a tactic often used, right, to break down a victim's sense of self.
Right.
But even in this darkness, there's this little glimmer of humanity, right? Misty describes New York City to Patch.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's like this imagined escape from their confinement.
Yeah, a little bit of hope.
Yeah. And then a moment of both relief and uncertainty.
What's that?
They escape.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But they step out into the unknown. They leave their prison behind, but their future is very uncertain.
It is.
Yeah. And then, following their escape, we have these news reports that confirm the discovery of female remains. Oh, no.
Bringing closure to some families. But Callie Montrose is still missing.
Right.
And we see Chief Nix very emotional during a press conference. It shows, the ongoing pain, the unresolved nature of her disappearance.
Of course.
Meanwhile, Saint is at the hospital.
Okay.
Keeping vigil. And Misty Meyer visits, and there's this tense exchange.
Yeah.
Misty mentions this newspaper report suggesting that Saint might have been involved with Patch's disappearance or the fire at Aaron's.
What?
Saint vehemently denies it.
I bet.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Patch and Saint, they finally reunite.
Oh, okay.
But it happens in a police car. And it's not the joyful reunion you might expect.
Right.
Patch is emotionally withdrawn. He's grappling with trauma.
Yeah.
And Saint sees the change in him.
Of course.
And even though Chief Nix acknowledges Patch's role in helping them, Patch remains internally distant. His mind has been affected by the drugs, by the trauma.
Yeah.
And it emphasizes the lasting impact of what he's experienced.
Right. And his scars, they're both physical and emotional. They're evident.
Yeah.
And we see him looking at a map.
Okay.
Which seems to symbolize his desire to escape his past and Montclair.
To get away.
Yeah. And he watches life in Montclair, like from a distance.
Yeah.
And he feels disconnected.
Yeah.
It's not until he sees Misty Meyer that there's any, real connection.
Okay.
And their encounter is awkward. Unspoken trauma hangs between them.
Yeah.
It's clear they're both struggling to navigate this new reality.
For sure.
And Saint, ever the steadfast friend, she researches trauma to try to understand Patch.
Right.
And then Patch makes this startling request.
What's that?
He tells her he needs to steal a car.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It highlights how disruptive this whole experience has been.
Right.
And going back to school, it's incredibly difficult for him. He's silent. Isolated, really showing the challenges of, trying to return to normal.
Right.
And Patch does end up stealing a car, his mother's first, and then another.
Oh, boy.
And he uses these cars to get to the Panora Public Library.
Okay.
And there, he searches through microfiche.
Microfiche.
Yeah, for missing persons reports.
Wow.
And he seems to be focused on Callie Montrose.
I see.
Yeah. And he begins to understand the impact of these disappearances on families.
Right.
And Saint joins him at the library. They look through the photos together. Patch becomes fixated on a picture of Callie. He asks Saint about Eli Aaron and the specific details of the bodies. He needs answers.
Yeah.
And as part of a work detail, Patch starts cleaning Montclair fine art.
Okay.
And there's this moment where he sees a photo of a family, and it's maybe a subtle commentary on what he himself has lost.
Right.
And he meets Sammy at the gallery, and their interaction hints at Sammy's eccentric personality, but also that Sammy knows about Patch's past.
Interesting.
And Patch starts sketching, and his art becomes this outlet for his turmoil.
Yeah.
He initially focuses on a figure that seems to represent Grace, maybe Callie. It's the start of his artistic journey. And Chief Nix visits Patch, bringing his old Playboy magazines.
Oh, wow.
In this kind of awkward attempt to connect, they talk about Patch cleaning the police station, Nix's concern for him, the social services involvement.
Okay.
And Nix implants that the search for Callie is still active.
I see.
Her disappearance is still an open wound.
Right.
And Patch desperately wants information about her.
Yeah.
And Patch and Misty, they have this uncomfortable lunch together.
Oh.
Misty brings this elaborate birthday cake acknowledging the celebration he missed.
Right.
It's a poignant but awkward attempt to connect.
Yeah, I can see that.
And they visit a bus station where Callie's missing person poster still hangs, a reminder of the unresolved case.
Yeah.
And Saint and Patch, they share this brief moment of physical connection,
Okay.
a small sign of their bond. And Misty continues to bring Patch food, but their interactions, they're still strained, tinged with that shared trauma.
Right.
And at school, Patch is still an outsider. He's marked by his experience. And then Patch and Saint, they start putting up missing posters for Callie.
Oh, okay.
And their shared purpose, it rekindles their friendship.
That's nice.
Yeah. And Saint sees Misty at the movie theater with Chuck, and she notes Misty's resilience, but maybe also a touch of melancholy. Misty herself reflects on what was stolen from Patch.
Oh, wow.
And then another missing girl, Grace, is mentioned.
Okay.
Foreshadowing future events. And Misty shows her loyalty to Patch by confronting bullies who are bothering him.
Good for her.
Yeah. And Saint sees Patch at his piano lesson, and she notices his emotional fragility,
Right.
a reminder of those internal scars.
Yeah.
And they go back to Eli Aaron's burned-out house, searching for clues about Callie.
Okay.
And on the property, they find what looks like a shallow grave, deepening the mystery.
Oh, no.
And Patch says he believes that Grace would have found him if Aaron were still alive.
Wow.
And Patch gets invited to dinner at the Myers. He's uncomfortable, unsure. And Saint encourages him to go to acknowledge the good he did for Misty.
Right.
And Saint reveals that while Patch was captive, she went to the police station every day to make sure Callie's case wasn't forgotten.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah. And there's this tense moment when Saint asks Patch if he loves Grace. He doesn't answer.
Oh.
And Dr. Toombs visits Patch, urging him to move on. Patch's mother also appears, confused, struggling to understand what her son's been through. And Toombs warns about the dangers surrounding the girl, meaning Callie.
Good.
And Patch finds Toombs at the church, seeking forgiveness, which reveals something disturbing about Toombs.
Yeah.
And Saint helps Patch sort through his father's things. She reflects on his scars, her commitment to his healing. She contacts missing persons organizations, trying to find anything about Callie.
Wow.
And Saint practices shooting with her grandfather's pistol. It shows her developing strength.
I know.
And at the Myers dinner, Patch feels the contrast between his life and their world. And Sammy offers Patch a job at the gallery to work off a debt, although it's vague.
Interesting.
And Patch starts painting under Sammy's tutelage. His skill grows quickly, and he keeps painting a figure that looks like Grace.
Okay.
Misty visits the gallery and sees all the portraits of Grace. She recognizes their beauty, suggests they be displayed. Patch admits his emotional connection to these paintings.
Right.
And Misty confesses she misses Patch, admits her feelings. Patch is conflicted.
Yeah.
And before leaving, she gives him a letter.
Oh.
And Saint and Norma go on a trip, and Saint thinks about the passage of time, her changing relationship with Patch.
Yeah.
And Saint experiments with her appearance.
Okay.
And then Patch and Saint, they kiss.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. But then Patch leaves school to work in the mines, and years pass. They stay somewhat connected. Patch keeps painting, and he sends portraits of missing girls to their families.
That's really nice.
Yeah. And Patch and Misty, they have their first fight.
Okay.
Saint has this awkward encounter with Jimmy Walters, and Patch comes back to Montclair for an art exhibition at Sammy's gallery.
Okay.
He and Saint reconnect. Patch still won't sell Grace #1.
It means too much to him.
Yeah. And Saint's suspicions about Dr. Toombs, they come back when she sees his prescription at Ivy McCauley's. She takes the papers.
Oh, wow.
And Misty's parents try to pay Patch to stay away from her.
What?
He refuses. He's loyal to Misty.
That's good.
And Saint investigates Eli Aaron's abandoned house, still looking for clues about Grace.
Yeah.
And Harkness reveals a hidden cellar on the Adler land.
Oh, interesting.
Renewing hope of finding Grace.
Right.
And Misty and Patch's relationship ends after a fight. Misty's frustrated with Patch's obsession with Grace, but then she comes back, showing how strong their connection is.
Right.
And Saint and Chief Nix, they talk about Patch in the years that have passed. Saint learns that Misty has traveled.
Okay.
Patch keeps traveling, painting missing girls, sending the portraits to their families. And Saint and Jimmy's relationship progresses. They move in, get married, but there's this tension, unspoken feelings.
I see.
And Saint becomes a police officer.
Wow.
And Patch contacts Saint, still asking about Callie Montrose and Eli Aaron.
Boy.
He's still searching.
Right.
And he eventually goes back to Montclair.
Oh.
And Saint and Chief Nix, they talk about the McCauley case and the art gallery. Nix has regrets, and he knows the case has had a lasting impact.
Yeah.
And Saint and Norma, they talk about Patch. Norma says some things about relationships, maybe hinting at Saint's own choices.
Interesting.
And Saint and Norma, they have this conversation about fate, Saint's past actions. Morma shows her love and support.
Yeah.
And years later, Patch and Misty reconnect in Boston. It's bittersweet. They acknowledge their shared history, their different lives.
Oh.
Saint moves into a new house with Jimmy, a gift from his parents. They get married.
Okay.
Saint struggles with being a police officer and her connection to Patch in the past.
Right.
She learns Patch has been seen in Kansas. She goes to Kansas and interviews Dawn, the bank teller Patch met when he was a bank robber. Dawn remembers him positively. And Saint Patch finally talk on the phone. It's full of unspoken emotion, a shared understanding.
Yeah.
Patch says he's getting letters from Joseph. He's still traveling.
Wow.
Saint keeps working, but she can't stop thinking about Patch and Callie. Her marriage to Jimmy is strained.
I see.
She's successful at work, but her personal life suffers.
Right.
Patch contacts her again, still focused on Callie and Eli Aaron. He says rosary beads were found on the bodies.
Oh.
Patch calls from a bus station, and Saint traces it.
Wow.
Patch goes back to Montclair and visits St. Joseph's Cathedral. He talks about Grace as his wife.
That's so sad.
Saint and Chief Nix have a final conversation. Nix admits the lasting impact of the Macaulay case, the complexity of outcomes.
Yeah.
Saint is struggling with her emotions, her past.
Right.
She dreams about Patch. She gets information that Patch might be in Arizona following something Callie saw.
Oh, okay.
Saint travels to Arizona.
Wow.
Saint and Patch reunite in Oklahoma.
Oh, wow.
They have a meal, a quiet talk. Their bond is still there. Patch talks about his memories of Grace.
Yeah.
Patch visits the church where Callie is buried. He talks to the pastor.
Oh, wow.
Saint and Patch travel to Missouri, getting closer to where Grace might be.
Okay.
They reach a box canyon, a possible location.
Right.
They follow clues, memories, and find a rusted sign. They think it's near where the body was buried.
Oh, wow.
Patch says he still remembers things Grace told him.
Oh.
They find a shallow grave.
Oh, no.
Saint learns more about Eli Aaron's past, his time as an altar boy named Robert, his disturbing behavior.
Right.
Charlotte is older now, living with Patch and Sammy. She's strong, resourceful.
Good.
Saint visits them. Charlotte says she gets letters from people touched by Patch's paintings.
Wow.
Patch and Charlotte are close. Charlotte knows about Patch's past, his reasons.
Yeah.
Patch's art gets more recognized. He has a successful show in New York. Saint and Patch have a deep talk about the past, loss, Grace's impact. Saint understands the complexity of Patch's actions.
Right.
She learns about Patch's life in prison, his work, his reading.
Yeah.
Saint visits Patch in prison. They talk about Grace. Patch says Toombs confessed to killing her.
What?
Patch describes his last encounter with Toombs. Toombs implies Patch hasn't really escaped.
Oh, wow.
Patch gets in a fight in prison, protecting someone. He loses access to death row, the library. He accepts his fate.
Oh, that's sad.
Saint continues her life, but the past is still there.
Right.
Charlotte is doing well with Saint and Sammy. She's developing her own talents, including art.
That's nice.
There's a murder in Darby Falls. Richie Montrose, Callie's father. Saint investigates.
Oh, no.
She finds evidence linking Marty Toombs to the murder.
Oh, wow.
Saint races to stop Toombs' execution. She thinks he's innocent of killing Callie, but guilty of killing Richie.
Oh, okay.
There's a flashback to Toombs interacting with Grace, trying to help her. He confesses to writing the letter to Richie. Patch is out of prison, finding peace in a small town.
Good.
Saint finds Patch in Grace Falls, Alabama.
Oh, wow.
They have their final confrontation. Patch tells her the truth about Grace, his captivity, his actions. He confirms it was Grace buried at the farmhouse.
Wow.
Patch surrenders to Saint.
Oh.
Grace's remains are found.
Oh, okay.
Marty Toombs gets a check and his land back. He finds some peace.
Right.
Saint thinks about Charlotte's growth, her own understanding of family, love.
Yeah.
Saint and Charlotte visit Patch. He's living a quiet life, keeping a painting of himself and Saint as kids. Saint decides not to tell him about Toombs' confession about Richie.
Wow.
So, what a journey we've taken through all the colors of the dark, from that shock of Patch's disappearance to uncovering those secrets. It takes us through grief, resilience, the power of connection between Saint and Patch.
It does.
And you, the learner, you now have a chronological understanding of those key events.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Whitaker really shows us the long-term consequences of those traumatic events.
Oh, for sure.
How the past continues to affect these characters, their choices, their relationship.
Absolutely. And it makes you think about how deeply events can impact people and communities, and how the search for truth and peace can be so long and difficult.
And by going through it chronologically like this, you really see those connections between the characters, the mysteries that unfold.
Yeah, it's a powerful story.
It is.
Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoyed the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.